go. Wouldn't it be great if you could attract anything you want easily and effortlessly? Wouldn't it be great if you could know how to make the best decisions all the time? And wouldn't it be great if you could create a life that you actually want to live, one that makes you jump out of the bed in the morning, excited to get started? Well, the good news is it can be fun and easy to do all this and more when you learn who you are and how you're hardwired energetically. And that is what we're going to cover today. Of course, there's a lot to it, and it can be confusing and overwhelming. So my intention today is to break it down into smaller, bite-sized chunks. And today our focus is what your profile says about your public role. This is part of a larger course called Understanding Your Purpose Through Your Human Design Chart. And so this particular session is focused on your public role. So what we're going to cover today is the 12 profiles and what does that profile say about your public role. Then we're going to have time for Q&A at the end. If you don't have a chart, this is a good time to open up a new browser window and get one at freehumandesignchart.com, just so you can follow along. And if you have friends or family or a partner that you're curious about and you can pull their chart too, that will make this even more interesting for you. So let's go ahead and jump in. My name is Grace Gravestock, and I have been a professional change manager for almost 20 years. And I really don't like titles. I don't really want to call myself a personal transformation coach, but for lack of a better word, I help women in midlife transition create a life they actually want to live. Why do I say this? Because just 5 years ago, my life was shattered in a very short period of time when I went through an unexpected divorce, got laid off, and had to face my health crisis, which was debilitating migraines that I'd had for 18 years. And if you want to know how I overcame that, then, ask me later, because it's a great story. And it's amazing how I was looking in all the wrong places for the answer. But when I had all these things happen to me in a very short period of time, I felt like it was the dark night of the soul. And I remember one night walking around the neighborhood and every tree looked like gallows to me. And they were like beckoning me, come, end it now, and I had never been a suicidal person, but let me tell you, it was a close night that night. And thankfully, I moved in with friends after my husband at the time put a knife to my neck, had to go in a hurry to somewhere else. Thank God I had friends to go to. They invited me to stay with them and almost immediately urged me to get a human design reading. I'd never in my life spent that much money on myself. It was a couple $100 for a reading. And because I did finally invest in myself, I was determined I was going to get the most value out of it. So I listened to the recording 3 times and I took notes, and it was on the 3rd time when I was transcribing that, boom, all these light bulbs went off, bing, 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 bing. And I realized all these things about myself. And it was life changing, because I realized at that point that I am not broken. I'm perfect the way I am, and that I'm here for a purpose. And all the aspects of who I am are coming together so that I can live out my purpose. So I'm passionate now to help other people who may have not yet found their purpose or felt clear about it to find it. And we find it through the human design chart, because it is an energetic map of who you are. It's so personalized, so specific, and so beautiful that you don't have to guess, wait, am I really that person, or is this person just telling me that? No, it's actually in your chart. So it's on paper, it's in color, and you can understand it. If you want to dig into it, you can do it on your own, or you can get help from somebody like me that would be happy to explain it to you. But at least for me, it was important to get out of my head and say, wow, there's nothing wrong with me. Doesn't matter what my ex-husband used to tell me about myself. I can see in my chart that these are the characteristics I have, and this is the highest expression, and this is the lowest expression, and these are the lessons that I am here to learn, and these are the gifts that I'm going to get when I overcome them. So all of that is in your chart. It's so beautiful. And so as I went through this challenge of navigating all this personal change, I decided I'm going to just apply to myself and my own personal situation all the things that I've been teaching or sharing with my corporate clients for so many years about managing change, right? Usually it was technology changes when in the workplace, like you get a big new computer system and, they would bring me in and a team and we'd do the communication and the change management and the training and all that kind of stuff to say, here's what you used to do, here's what you're going to stop doing, and here's what you're going to start doing on this date. So that's what change management is the way I was practicing it for corporate. And so I decided I'm going to practice this on the personal level in my own life. And as I did that, I realized that there was a missing component, and that was life changing. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've been teaching all this without recognizing how important energy is. So energy is a component that I never heard anyone talk about in my corporate life. And I worked for countries. I worked for the UK. I worked for the state of California. I worked for all these big, big names. These are just a couple of them. But I've worked with a lot of different people and really impressive people, and nobody ever mentioned energy or the energetics of anything. So as I became a biofield energy healer and I learned about my human design chart and the importance of the energetic blueprint, it's like, wow, they should be teaching this in school. And so I started writing some of it down in a book, and I have yet to finish that. But if anyone's interested, let me know. It will give me something to respond to. And I'm in the process of making videos and writing up some of the stories, at least to start sharing my message more broadly. So that's a little bit about me. This is why I feel so passionate to share it with you, because I know it's life-changing, and I know that when you are living in alignment with your design, life really can be fun and easy. It can be really beautiful, and I want that for you. So today we're really learning about, whoops, I need to update this chart. Yesterday we talked about type, and today we're going to talk about profile. Actually, here, follow my cursor, not the block. Profile. I'm a 2-5, and we're going to talk about what those numbers mean. It is the costume that we wear in this life. So there's a lot of pieces to a human design chart, and I look forward to working with you if you're interested in learning more about yours. This particular series covers a lot of the basics, and there's so much that you can learn if you just applied the basics. Wow, it's the 80-20 rule. 80% of the results come from 20% of the effort. And so it is the effort that you'll expend learning about your own design is absolutely, there's just no money can pay for it. The beautiful benefits it can bring into your life when you're living in alignment. Whew. Well, deep breath. Here we go. There is no one size fits all. Human design teaches us that we are all unique. We are all different. It is called the science of differentiation, and also the science of awakening, because it celebrates our differences, and it says we're all specific and different and unique. And actually, human design teaches and shows us that humanity goes through cycles, hundreds and hundreds of years of cycles. We're just at the tail end of a cycle called the cross of planning. It's I don't want to confuse you, but just a point of reference for those of you who are knowledgeable about your incarnation cross, or if you're going to take another class from me later, or maybe you want to get a personal reading and we can talk about this. But in your chart, it shows, actually, let me go back. Let me show you what this is. Incarnation cross on your chart. This is mine, right angle cross of a sleeping phoenix. These 4 codes, this is an energy pattern. And so humanity has been going through the energy pattern, what is called the right angle cross of planning, for about 450 years, according to human design. We're actually on the cusp right now between the cross of planning and this one, the cross of the sleeping phoenix, which is mine. So I'm excited. I know this time is what I'm here for. Transition is what I'm here for. That's why my business is called New Paradigm Transitions. That's why I'm an expert in change management. We've had so much changes the last couple of years and more to come. So all of us can benefit from learning about learning how to better manage change on our own. And the very best thing that you can do to manage the change is to stay strong in who you are, to stay grounded in your own energetic blueprint. So that's what we're going to dig into today, at least part of it, the costume. So I wanted to give you the grounding of this key element, which is there is no one size fits all. That is actually the signature of the last era that we're leaving. The cross of planning has sort of that energetic. It's the reason why as I was growing up, that I was told, everyone needs to go to college, get married, have 2.5 kids, live in a little house in the suburbs with a white picket fence, and have a silver, gray, silver, white, or black car. It's just like everybody has to be the same. Have a Costco membership, whatever it is. And so that energetic that's pushing everybody for sameness is part of that energy for the cross of planning. But we're leaving that and we're going into the cross of the sleeping phoenix, which highlights this. There is no one size fits all. We're all unique. We're all special. We're all different. And let's celebrate those differences, because now that we're on an energetic platform, a new energetic platform, I call it the new paradigm platform, everything is going to change. It's going to be different than it was before. And part of that difference is learning to collaborate more with others. I like to say the time of the single shingle is over, where everybody did their own thing, and the future is collaboration, and the future is women leading as well. So if you're in a feminine body today and you're watching this class, this is our time. And it's not that we don't love men and we don't appreciate the masculine, but it's time for us to stop trying to be like men and to celebrate our own femininity, because the fact of the matter is we all have something valuable to not only share, but to contribute towards creating a better world. And so human design helps us understand what are those things that we are here to bring to the table to create that world that we want to live in. And we all have special gifts and different characteristics that contribute. And so there is no one size fits all. And so increasingly you're going to see that more and more as we progress. I'm taking a deep breath because manifesting generators like me tend to talk too fast and not take enough breath. So I'm going to try to pause and let that land. And now we'll start with this, your public role. This is called your profile in your human design chart, and it's based on the I Ching. There's 6 lines that there's a lot of technicalities, and I don't want to get into that right now in human design, but it's very technical. It's a lot like a computer manual, configurations and all that. And so if you think of the human as a like almost like a computer. I'm not saying we are computers, but I'm just saying, like, if you went to buy a computer and you'd have to have the specs, like how much hard drive do you need? How much RAM do you have? How fast do you need it to be? Does it need to be portable? Can it be at a desktop? All those kinds of things. Those are examples of configuration for a computer. So when we look at human design, we're looking at your particular configuration as a human. And these aspects of your public role make up what we call your costume, the costume that you wear in this lifetime, and it's based on the I Ching. In one of the other classes, we went into more detail about the origins of human design, but it does draw on many ancient systems, and it's the most precise, and it boils down all these beautiful truths into a single truth specific to you. So today we're going to look at these 6 lines. Your profile is made up of these 6 lines. And so there are 12 profiles, and they're combinations of these numbers. So the first number on your chart is going to be what we call your conscious side. This is the part of you that you understand, that you see it's the way you see yourself for the most part. And the second number is the number that the way that others see you. It's called your unconscious side. And so this is the part of you that you may or may not recognize as you, but it is an important aspect of you. And it's also the characteristics that we inherit genetically or energetically from our families of origin. So with that, we're going to get into the lines today. And so your chart, if you look under your profile on your chart, you should see 2 numbers. And so just go ahead and get the chart out so that it's easy to follow on, and then focus on the 2 that reference you, and then know that they're all harmonic and they work beautifully with others. And so as you learn about the other types, you can start to see more about yourself and more about maybe why you're drawn to certain kinds of people, for instance. And also one other thing, because I've had this question before, people say, well, like a lot of the characteristics of this thing feel like me, but my chart says I'm this. Well, the fact of the matter is there's a lot of characteristics that you have in your chart, and there's a lot of complexity. So don't get hung up on that. Just know that this is, if you have your birth time accurate, then it's, your date of birth, time of birth, and city of birth is what your whole human design chart is based on. And, I do recommend going to a reputable, I say reputable site. I mean, there sometimes there's issues with time zones and whatever, but freehumandesignchart.com is excellent. So is Genetic Matrix. So those are two that I would highly recommend to make sure that you get an accurate reading when you're looking at what are the parts that reflect you. And then, of course, understanding the complexity of it too. And again, you can always get a personalized chart reading, and that can help you to understand or ask questions about the nuances. Well, let's go ahead and jump in. These are the 6 lines. First of all, most people want to know, how common is mine? Well, you can see here, this data is pulled from hundreds of thousands of charts. This comes from Jovian Archive, which is one of the human design organizations that Ra Uru, who the founder, I think he passed it on to, I think it's his son who runs that. I think this is the image, the branding for Jovian Archive, but that's where all of these data points come from. A lot of research that they've done over the years. Human design was introduced onto this planet about 30 years ago. And the founder, Ra Uru, who has passed since then, but he was a 5-1 manifester. And so manifestors, as you may know from the other classes about type, manifestors are here to initiate. So his role as a 5-1 manifester was to initiate this very different way of looking at humans and looking at the world. And so when we get to the 5 and the 1, you'll see why it makes perfect sense that human design would be brought to this planet through a 5-1 manifester. Manifestors, again, are here to initiate. So he was initiating that for all of us. So when we look at the profiles, we see that the most common profile, I mean, it's only slightly more, but the most common profile is the 1-3. And we'll get into why that is in just a minute, but essentially they're researcher explorers, and they create a strong foundation for all of us. So it's important to note why there are more of that than any other type, and then why. Like I noticed, for instance, myself, I'm pretty rare. I'm a 2-5, and so 2-5s are just 2.27% of the population. So we're just in the very much minority, but that's because, anyway, we're all special. So just know that this is kind of where you fit in. There is a lot that we could discuss about compatibility and why you're drawn to certain types. There's harmonics in the lines. It has to do with the I Ching. I mean, there's a lot of complexity we could get into, but let's keep it simple today and just know that these are the most common profiles. And it's interesting to note that the 2-4, for instance, has apparently the most potential partners, because 2-4s are just very attractive to just about everyone, it seems. So don't get hung up on it. This is just one aspect. I know that there was a time when I first got into this that I was sharing this information with someone, and she wanted to, she was in her excitement to vet sort of her possible new friends in college. She was doing everybody's chart, and I cautioned her, don't let compatibility for certain profiles keep you from a great relationship. And that is a mistake that I think some people can make. And my human design teacher, my primary human design teacher, is Karen Curry Parker, and she has answered this question many times. And she says, profile is just a component of your human design. And going forward, the most important aspect of compatibility is, does this person share my values? Do they love and respect me? And is it mutual? So that's the most important thing. So don't get too hung up on compatibility, but it is interesting to note what the different types or what the different profiles are. And then to start to notice if you have patterns in your life. Like I know that some families have all the same. I mean, I have a good friend who is also into human design, and everyone in her family is 6-2s. I mean, how strange is that? And I know that I'm a lot like my dad, and he's also a manifesting generator like me. So there's some interesting patterns that you can start to notice, and then that can take you on a journey of interesting revelations about why and what does it mean. And there's a lot more we could go into, but today we're going to keep it simple, and we're going to look at just these 12 profiles through the lens of just the 6 lines. So here we go. Let's do it. We're going to start with the one. The one we also call, we usually in traditional human design, this is called the investigator. And then there's been newer language that some people have come up with. Karen Curry Parker, my teacher, has come up with some of this. She calls it quantum language. And so authority and resource, I believe, are part of the quantum reference for this particular number. I put multiple names up here for the numbers just to give you a better sense at a glance for what this energy is about. And it's just an archetype, it's an energy pattern. And so these one lines are here to lay the information foundation for everyone's safety and securities. Because they ask so many questions, they establish a solid energetic foundation for everyone else to build on. So they are wanting to research, they're wanting to be thorough, they're always asking questions, they're insatiably curious, and they need to understand why before they can do anything. I have a niece who's a 5-1, and when I shared human design with my sister, who was her mom, she said, "Oh, now I get it." She used to be really annoyed with my niece because she always was asking questions and she just had to understand before she could take action. And it drove my sister nuts. But now that she understands that this is part of her profile, she gets that this is who she is, and that she's playing a vital role in the future of humanity by playing her part. And that's what we're all meant to do. Play the part that you have. So be yourself. That is your biggest purpose in this life, is to be yourself. Yes, there are other aspects of it that we can discuss. Yes, there are codes in your incarnation cross that help you see the patterns. Yes, you want to live in authority, live in alignment with your strategy and authority. I mean, all this is part of living your purpose. But if I had to put it in one sentence, your purpose is to be you. So the one lines help create a stable, secure foundation for all of us, because they ask a lot of questions and they get a lot of information. They put it out on the table and they write books about it. They talk about it, whatever. They're creating that solid foundation, becoming an authority or a resource for the collective. So the one lines, if you have a one line in your family, they are probably somebody that everybody goes to as a resource, or maybe they could or should. But they become an authority and a resource because they investigate. And that is the energetic backing of this one line. And so their focus can be fear of the unknown. I mean, if they're a fear-driven person, that could be a big deal, and they might be here to overcome that. But you could notice this in yourself if you're a one line, or in someone else, that they tend to have a fear of the unknown. And this drives them to do more investigating, to do more research, to find out, to understand, because they want to make the unknown known. And all of a sudden it's easier to deal with because now it's a known quantity instead of unknown. So hope that makes sense. You see this one line in these profiles, the 1-3, the 1-4, the 4-1, and the 5-1. And, just again, a reminder, the placement of it really just has to do with how this energy is played out for you. So if it's your first number, then that's probably more about how you see yourself. And if it's in the second number, it may or may not be how you see yourself, but it's probably for sure how other people see you. So a 5-1 and a 4-1, for instance, they're going to be the people that people go to. Their friends and family go to them, and because they see them as an authority and a resource. But if you're a 4-1 or a 5-1, you may not necessarily think of yourself that way. So I hope that helps you to understand the difference between the conscious, which is the first number, and the unconscious, which is the second. There's a little more to it that we could discuss about inherited energy and all that, but we would do that in a personalized session. So if you're interested in that, ask grace.info, schedule time. I would love to share more on a personal basis to make it more relevant to you. Let's go ahead and move on to 2. The 2 line is called the Hermit in traditional human design. This is part of my design, so I'm very familiar with it. In the quantum language, we call the 2 the natural, or the responder. And, when I first learned that I was a hermit, it's funny, I didn't resonate with it right away. I'm very extroverted and I'm very social. I never thought of myself as a hermit. But as I started really learning about my design and understanding the purpose for this energy, the purpose is really for the 2 lines, the hermits, to kind of go in their cave, or their office or their room and do their thing. And then they get called out when somebody wants their knowledge. So you see this here in the second bullet, designed to be called out to share its gifted way of thinking. The 2 line likes, or maybe doesn't like, but needs alone time. My younger sister used to tease me when I first shared this with her. She said, "You don't need any alone time. You need about as much alone time as it takes you to brush your teeth." And that's true. I mean, I have a motorized throat. I'm very social. I thought I didn't need any alone time, but then when I started tracking it, I realized that when I have guests over, I've with friends and family, and I say goodnight, it usually takes me an hour and a half before from the time I say goodnight till the time that I can actually go to sleep. And it's just like a processing time. It's not like I set a clock. It's just a pattern that tends to happen. And I realized when I started noticing that is my alone time, when I'm processing things that happen during the day, I'm thinking, I'm listening to music, whatever it is, it's time that I just want to be by myself and I don't want to be bothered. And that is when my hermit comes out. So we hermits are here to integrate with that alone time, the knowledge, the energy, and wisdom. We integrate it into a package to make it easy for other people to understand, and we can explain it when others call us out. When others are ready to hear it, they will call us out, and then we will share it. And that is why it's called responder, because if you're a hermit, if you're a 2 line, you're not here to just share your message with everybody. You're here to respond when they call you out and when they ask you for guidance or whatever. And so that is the time when the hermit comes out of the cave, is when they're called out. They can be seen as shy or coy. I know when I was young, my parents thought I was so shy. My dad got me a ventriloquist doll because I would talk like this and I couldn't move my lips. And he didn't want me to be so shy. And then when I was 11, he got me a karaoke machine and pushed me in front of people to sing. He really didn't want to have a shy daughter, because I don't know, he's a salesman and he just didn't like that I was so shy. So I never thought of myself as shy as an adult because I'd always been pushed into the spotlight. But when I think back to who I was as a child, I was really shy. And I did like alone time. In fact, I just like to read books. I just wanted to be left alone to read my books. Everybody else just go away. So if you're wondering now about how this, any of these numbers, whatever is true for you, if you think back to the time when you were a child, you might see that that's when you were more yourself without the conditioning and programming that society or your family or someone else has pushed on you since then, and that's probably your more natural state. So that's what I learned when I started really getting into what does my profile mean and how does this relate to me, because at first it didn't resonate at all. So the focus for 2 lines is aloneness. So that can also be a fear of aloneness. I mean, the funny thing is I used to have this fear that I would die alone. I mean, why would I even have that fear? And then when I read this, I was like, oh, that's what it is. It's just part of this archetype of the hermit. And I don't fear death anymore, and I don't fear being alone. And it's one of the things that I've overcome in my life to be more myself, is to appreciate that I do need alone time and I don't have to fear it, and it's okay. And I now appreciate my own company more than anyone else. And that's important because self-love going forward is really, really key to living in alignment. So if you have a 2 line in your profile, then you will be either a 2-4, a 2-5, a 5-2, or a 6-2. In my experience, the 2-4s and the 6-2s are definitely the more popular profiles. And you see the 2 lines show up a little bit differently, like I said, if it's conscious or unconscious for you, but that is what the 2 line is about. If you have a 3 in your chart, then you are what traditional human design used to call a martyr. And in more quantum language, we call you the explorer. Now, the martyr was called this because, if you think about it, the martyrs of old, the martyrs of antiquity that got burned at the stake, why were they called martyrs? Well, they were going where no one else was willing to go. They were doing things and they were saying things that were outside the norm. And they got slaughtered for it. They got, killed, burned at the stake. Society did not do well for them in the past. And now, thankfully, we're in a new time, and explorers are, I think, are in a much safer position now. But if you have a 3 line in your profile, you're naturally adventurous, you're naturally resilient, you're here to experience life and learn through your experiences, through your different experiences, through trial and error, essentially bumping into, physically or metaphorically speaking, bumping into things and people. I say that on purpose because the 3 line literally has a very physical component to it. So most of my 3 line clients are healers, energy healers, or body workers, or they work out a lot. Like my brother is a amazing, I call him a workout guy. You know, he's very fit, has been working out his entire life. And when I looked at his profile, he's a 3-5. I'm like, well, of course, there you go. The 3 lines have a very physical aspect to them. Either they like to travel usually, or try new foods, or they're physically inclined, like working out, or maybe they are into sports or yoga or something that has a physical aspect, or maybe they just got bumped around a lot. I have a half brother, a stepbrother, who I think is a 3 line, although I've never done his chart, but he has gotten into so many accidents as a kid, you know, just like being very adventurous with sports and getting bruised up and banged up and breaking this and breaking that. And those are often 3 lines because they're here to experience and explore the world in a very physical way. And so in the old days, we used to call them martyrs, and they get burned at the stake for being explorers and going where no man has gone before. But today we can appreciate them as experts in what works and what doesn't based on their experience. I have a really good friend that's a 3-5, and when I shared this with her, you know, it just was a really big light bulb when I said, "You're an expert in what doesn't work." And she said, "Oh my gosh, I so am." And so she had been ridiculed by her family all of her life for you know, doing it wrong or whatever, you know, whatever other people expected. But really, she's here to explore life. And so 3 lines never make mistakes. It's all a process of learning. It's a process of exploring, and it's a process of experiencing life, and usually in a very physical way. So they might also be tactile, or they might be kinesthetics. There might be, you know, there's many ways that that 3 line explorer energy can come through. But like I said, often my 3 lines love to travel, or they're physically active or whatever. And that's because they're here to explore the world. And that's their primary. So it's their primary, especially if they're a 3 line at the beginning, like a 3-5. It's their secondary or subconscious if it's the second line. They've never made a mistake because they don't make mistakes. They just learn through experiences, and they have a more of an intrapersonal energy, and their focus can be fear of failing. And so they're driven by this fear of failing their mission. And so they want to keep going, pushing forward, like Christopher Columbus. I mean, whatever we want to say about what he did or didn't do, the fact of the matter was he was explorer. And so he might have been, you could see how he could have had a fear of failing his mission to find new land. I mean, we know that it wasn't new. There were people living here already, but his mission was to claim stake for another country. And so he probably was driven in his exploring by a fear of failing. So I say that just because if you understand the underlying focus or fear that might be driving this particular archetype, it helps you to understand why they are doing what they're doing. So if you have a 3 line in your family, they're here to explore. What might be driving them? Well, maybe a fear, either consciously or unconsciously, of failing their mission, which they may or may not even know, but there's something that's driving them to just keep going and exploring where no man has gone before. I think that's important to know about 3 lines that you may be involved with. And, you know, I'll just say this one more thing. I've had several 3 line clients that have told me they think that the 3 line is the hardest profile to have. And you know, it can be, I guess. I mean, it's all relative, but the 3 line, because it is often, they're driven to do things and be interested and explore things that society doesn't necessarily condone. Like, for instance, I used to be very close to a 3 line who was not a nudist, I forget the word, but anyway, he just wanted everybody to be naked, and it wasn't necessarily about sex. It was more about just being free. And so that's an example of why a 3 line might have a challenging experience, because they are interested in things that are outside the norm, things that society doesn't necessarily approve of. And society is curious about them because they're doing things they're interesting, they're exploring, but they're the first ones that are going to usually be hand slapped or, by society for being outside the norm. So my point was just that some of my 3-5 clients have told me that they feel that that profile, or any three, mostly it's 3-5s that have told me this, they feel that they have the hardest profile just because there's so much, they're so far away from the norm, society's norms. And I always tell them, well, that might have been true in the old paradigm, but guess what? If you got a 5-line, you're here for the, I say this from my personal experience. I feel like the 5 lines are more energetically attuned to the new than some of the other profiles. It doesn't mean that you can't be if you're not a 5-line, but I think that the 3-5s have had a hard time in the old paradigm, but going forward, because there's new energetics that support exploring, that support new ways of living, working, and being, they're going to have an easier time going forward. So that's a little bit more about the 3-line, which is called the explorer or the martyr. Let's talk about the 4-line now. The 4-line is called the opportunist in traditional human design. And in new language, we call them an influencer. Whenever I see a 4 in someone's chart, I immediately, I know a lot about them. I know that they probably have a big network. And sometimes they don't recognize it immediately when I say that, but when we start digging into it, it's always true. The 4 lines are here for their friends and their family and their network. And so they'll always be the greatest influence to their friends and their network. I had a 4-6 generator who I worked with for a while, and he said that knowing this absolutely changed his business, because he was at that point wanting to spend ad money to try to reach strangers, people that didn't already know him. And I suggested that he shift his focus to really become more of an influencer and focus on his current network, so he could attract people through his network, through referrals and things like that. He did really well in affiliate marketing. And I believe it's because he's a 4-line. Because 4 lines are here to influence their network. And so this is kind of a fun fact. If you're a 4-line, and I know there are a lot of 4 lines on this particular call, if you think about the most important person in your life, or maybe somebody that used to be really important to you, and you think about how they came into your life, I can almost guarantee that they came in through your network. So it was a friend of a friend, or it came through somebody that introduced you, or whatever. But the most important people for a 4-line are always going to come through their network. They're not here for random strangers, which is different than me, a 5-line. I am here for random strangers, and we'll get to that in a minute. But this 4-line, because they're here to influence their friends and their network and their family, they have a different flavor of energy. It's more of a brotherhood, sisterhood kind of an energy. And it's beautiful, and it's very soothing. They're the heart and service of the community. They're always the first ones to share opportunities with their network. I lived with a 2-4 for a few years, and everybody went to her for, finding a job or whatever. And she always would connect them with somebody, great influencer, really amazing for connecting people. Why? Because she was using her network, which is a natural part of the 4-line influencer role. So if you have this, if you're a 4-line, this is part of the costume that you're wearing in this life to experience what it feels like, what it looks like, what you can accomplish in this life being an influencer. And in the old language, we called the 4 lines opportunist. And the reason is because they're very practical. It's like, who do I know that can help me get from here to there? Or who do I know that can do this or that or whatever? And they're thinking of their network usually, but they also can be seen as opportunists. And this cartoon, gives an illustration of that. That this would be a 4-line selling snowballs in the snow because they see an opportunity. 4 lines are very practical, and they also remind us of the importance of kinship, meaningful connection, keeping us all together during important times. So if you think about your friends and family network, and there's somebody that's like the person that's sort of maybe the matriarch or the patriarch of the family, often that can be a 4-line. I don't say always, because I'm that in my family and I'm a 5-line, but this particular energy of the four line, this archetype, is a person that is here to influence their friends, family, and network. And so they often, because of that, tend to be the solid, linchpin of the family, because that's what they're about. And because the four lines are so stable, if you've ever studied numerology, you know that four is a very stable, solid number. And if you think about if you think about a chair, it usually has four legs, and that creates stability. So the four lines really appreciate stability, and therefore they can be really uncomfortable with limbo. Now, does that mean that they can't handle limbo? No, it just means that they're more comfortable when all their ducks are lined up, when they know what job they're going to move to before they leave their last job or their last partner, whatever it is. They tend to want that stability before they make big jumps. And part of why that is they have a fear of loss. Now, this isn't necessarily conscious, but again, it's the underlying energy that helps this particular profile do what they do. If they fear loss, then they're going to strengthen what's close to them, their friends, their family, their network, and they're going to want to help avoid loss, help to mitigate loss by doing what they can to share resources and connection and all of that. So I always think it's important to understand what could be driving any of these lines, because it helps us understand the people in our lives and why they are the way they are, or at least potentially why they are the way they are. So if you have a four line, it's going to show up in one of these profiles. 1-4 is very rare. 4-1 is extremely rare. 2-4 is very common, and 4-6 is pretty common as well. So these are the influencers in our life. Let's talk about the 5 line. This is one of my lines, so I feel a little bit more connected to this one. 5 lines are messengers or visionary leaders. In the old language, I took it out, but it was called heretics. There wasn't enough space, and who wants to be a heretic, right? But the heretics were also burned at the stake. Why? Because they were visionary leaders. They were messengers. Often they had messages for the king or somebody else that wasn't pleasant for the person who got the message, and then they were burned at the stake. So I don't like the word heretic, and I really appreciate the work that my teacher Karen Curry Parker has done with updating the language that makes it, I think, more supportive and a little bit more accessible. But I think it is valuable to see what the original language was, because it helps us understand the energetic pattern. And that's all this is, really. It's an archetype. Remember, it's a costume you wear in this life, but it's an energetic costume. So it means you're going to see these patterns, but they're going to be variable. It's how it plays out in your life is going to be a little different than someone else. So if you're a 5 line, people might see you as a little bit mysterious, and they might feel a sort of seductive kind of energy that's compelling and persuasive. It doesn't necessarily need to be sexual, the seductive energy, but the reason that the 5 lines have this kind of seductive energy, this compelling, persuasive energy, is because usually they're here to give a message that other people would benefit from adopting, but it's usually a new message that may or may not be palatable. So it comes in a package that makes it easier for people to hear. So, for instance, I've always been told I'm very likable, which is great. It's great to be likable, and it helps me in my work, because if I'm here to help you manage the change in your life, I'm going to probably give you some hard messages that you may not want to hear. But if you like me, it's going to be easier to hear those messages. So I give that illustration to help you understand what this mysterious and seductive, compelling and persuasive energy could look like in somebody that you know or in yourself. And an important component of this 5 line is what we call a projection field. And this means that energetically, you are like a karmic mirror to others. And so you live in what we call a projection field, and people either see you as a demon or a savior. And the 5 line is often called the savior in some in some books, because they have this sort of savior energy. I mean, I've always had it. I always wanted to save my sisters, save my younger siblings from whatever, I always wanted to be the hero in some ways, but not hero, more as much as savior. Like I felt like I need to save them. But what's interesting is in the new paradigm, on the new platform, we don't need to save anyone. The most important thing that we do is focus on understanding who we are and being a sovereign beings. And the best way you can help others is to lead by example in your own life. So there's no need to save anyone from anything at this point. So I like the idea of thinking of the 5-line more as a messenger or a visionary leader or a general in time of trouble. So when there's a problem, usually this would play out in my career where there would be a big change. And then they would, I have a good reputation. People would call me and say, hey, can you come manage this change? That's an example of general in time of trouble. The company's going through a big change, big new system, and everybody's like, oh no, scared about it. And they need somebody to rally the troops, get together a plan, a strategy, get everybody going in the same direction. And that's an example of general in times of trouble. Another example came from my niece. When I told her, she's also 2-5, and she said, oh, general in times of trouble. So that could be like when my sister called me and needed me to do a drug test for her and pee in a cup in a parking lot. I'm like, well, that's kind of a funny example, but you were a general in time of trouble for her. So it can play out in lots of different ways. I mean, I share these silly stories to help you see that there's a lot of ways that the energy can play out. But when you understand the key the energetic of it, the underlying, it helps you to understand again the people in your life more easily. The 5-line has a particular challenge, which is familiarity breeds contempt. So, people like me, but they don't necessarily want to be around me all the time. And I've noticed that the familiarity breeds contempt. So a lot of my friends will call me out. I'm a 2-5. So the 2 is the hermit and the 5 is the one who's called out. So it's usually people calling me to want to engage when they want to talk about something out of the norm. This is what the visionary leader is about. And so, but they don't necessarily want to hang out with me all the time. So a lot of my friends I get together with, once a month or a couple times a year or a couple times whatever, but it's not necessarily every day because familiarity breeds contempt for a 5-line. You would notice that even more potentially if you're a projector with a 5-line. The 5 lines challenge traditional values in order to universalize something new. I mean, that is the bottom line, which explains why they have this particular energy that's sort of seductive and what the purpose of it is. As a visionary leader, they're here to make something new universal. So I'm here to positively impact 5, I'm going to say billion people by 2025 because I want to go big or go home, right? So 5 billion people by 2025. If 5 billion people knew how to operate in alignment with their design, I mean, can you just imagine what this world would be, how much better it would be and different? So why am I saying that? I'm giving you an example of what I'm here as a 5-line to universalize, which is something new. Human design is relatively new on the scene, and it does challenge traditional values because if you're unfamiliar, if you're not open to some of the aspects that human design is based on, like the astrology or I Ching or things like that, then it's hard to appreciate fully what's here. But that's because it's something. So it's an example of how 5 lines can challenge the old values to universalize something new like human design. So we're here to have an impact and be a catalyst for change. Before I ever saw these words, I was putting catalyst for change in my LinkedIn profile. Catalyst for change. Then I saw it here and I was like, wow, okay, that's me. I've always been a change manager, change agent, whatever. And because of this projection field, the 5-line can have a fear of not being seen or not feeling seen because the 5-line intuitively knows that people are projecting on them and they're not necessarily seeing them clearly. I like to use an app called The Pattern. And I've noticed that when I put other people's profiles in there and look at the energetic connection between me and this other person, it often will say that this person cannot see you clearly. They think you're this, but they can't really see you clearly. And that's because of the 5-line, which is a projection field. So here's how the 5 line shows up: a 2-5, 3-5, 5-1, and 5-2. And let's look at the 6 line, which is in traditional human design called the role model or leader. The leader, the 6 line, is is unique in that they have 3 different lives. They're almost like a cat with 9 lives, but if you're a 6 line and you're over the age of 50, this is going to be an easier exercise for you. But if you think back to what was happening between 0 to 30, ages 0 to 30, and then 30 to 50, and then 50 plus, you're going to see that you've had 3 very distinct phases of life. And the reason for that is, as a role model, you're here to share your advice and life experiences with others. And you do it by this. You've been there, done that. Yeah, I know what that's like. I did that. And whatever. And so you're able to relate to whatever problems people bring you because of your vast life experiences, which are going to be, like 3 different lifetimes for most people. It'll seem like 3 different lifetimes. So you have a lot to draw on, and that helps you to live out your role model purpose or your life purpose. If you see that this is a key, you can see how this is a key aspect of what could be your life purpose. You are here to lead by example as a role model, sharing your experiences of what you've been there and done that about. And so the 6 lines are usually great teachers, and they share their wisdom from really fascinating life experience, especially when you think about how they've had 3 different lives, in most cases. And many people that I've talked to and done readings for have had very different lives. These 3 different phases, it's almost like 3 different people. So again, the purpose of that is it helps you to have more been there, done that experiences that you can share to lead others, to help others, advise them as a role model. Now, because of this perspective, oh yeah, I've been there, done that, done this and this and this, they kind of have you may have, or someone that's a 6 line may have a detached and sort of mystical air about them, and they have a perspective that's like from a top of a mountain. Because they're able to put things in context, because they have so much experience to draw from and to speak from. And so that gives them kind of what we call here a high vision perspective, but it's kind of like a broader perspective because they can put it in context. And their focus is similar to a 3 line. They have a fear of failing the mission. Intuitively, they know they're here for a purpose and they're here to lead, but they don't want to fail the mission. And so that could drive them to have more experiences and to help more people and be a role model. And just remember that all of us are called to lead by example in the new paradigm. So it's not just the 6 lines, but what I've noticed in my work with the new paradigm and with building a sisterhood in the last year of women who are wanting to step up in their lives, I've noticed that the majority of them are 6-2s. It's so interesting. Not everybody, but I would say if there was one category of profile that I see the most often in my work with feminine leaders, it's the 6-2 profile. So I just think that's kind of funny. And so if you have a 6 line in your profile, you're either a 3-6 or a 6-3, which are relatively rare, or more common is the 4-6 or 6-2. So quick review, we talked about the 12 profiles and the combinations and what your profile says about your public role. If you apply that to your career, you can see that you are here to be and do something specific through the costume that you're wearing in this life, which is these archetypes, these energetic patterns that we've talked about. If you would like personalized help with your chart, I do offer many human design readings if you want to dip your toe in the water, or if you want to really get deep with your profile. It's a 2-hour reading. We call it a deep dive. If you are looking to get into partnership with someone, or business partnership or romantic partnership, this partnership assessment is an amazing way to look at your profile and theirs and look at the 3rd energy component that's created between the 2 of you to look at the potential and how to maximize the potential of your relationship. Very powerful. Activate Your Life Purpose is a great package, 2-hour package for really deep diving into your profile in the 1st hour. And then the 2nd hour, we look at the 4 codes that make up your incarnation cross. So those 4 numbers, they They make up 70% of what you're here for. But if you don't operate in alignment using your strategy and authority, then you can't, and until you do that, you can't fully step into your incarnation cross. It sort of finds you, but it doesn't happen until you're living in alignment. So that's why that's packaged in that way. 2 hours looking at your first, deep dive on your profile, and then looking at those 4 codes. That's pretty powerful. And then if you're not sure how I can help, or you just want to discuss something, give me a quick call. You can schedule that at askgrace.info.